The air over Nanjing in December 1937 was thick with the smells of smoke, cordite, and fear. The distant thunder of artillery had ceased, replaced by a far more terrifying sound: the sporadic crack of gunfire, the bursting of doors, and the screams that seemed to come from every alley. The capital of China had fallen to the Imperial Japanese Army. What followed was an orgy of violence so extreme, so systematic in its brutality, that it would stain the 20th century as one of its darkest chapters: the Rape of Nanjing. In the midst of this unfolding hell, where tens of thousands were being massacred, women subjected to unspeakable crimes, and the city looted and burned, a most improbable figure walked the blood-slicked streets. He was a tall, stout, middle-aged man with a neat mustache, dressed in a European suit, and on his arm he wore a red band emblazoned with a black swastika. He was John Rabe, a German businessman, a loyal member of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, and, against all conceivable odds, the central figure in one of the greatest rescue missions of the war. To the desperate Chinese civilians fleeing bayonets, this symbol of Nazi ideology became an unlikely talisman of safety. For Rabe, the swastika armband was not a political statement in that moment. It was a tool, a psychological weapon he wielded against the Japanese troops run amok. He would stand before advancing soldiers, invoke the name of the Japanese ally, Germany, and physically block doorways with his own body. In the moral vacuum of the massacre, this Nazi became a savior. His story is a breathtaking paradox, a testament to the fact that humanity can flicker in the most unexpected places, even within the rigid confines of a totalitarian ideology. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable question: can a man be both a believer in a monstrous political cause and a righteous hero? Who was John Rabe? He was not a soldier, diplomat, or missionary. He was the China representative for Siemens, the German industrial conglomerate. He had lived in Nanjing for nearly 3 decades, loved the city and its people, raised his family there, and considered it his home. He was, by all accounts, a company man, conservative, patriotic, and in 1934, he joined the Nazi Party's local chapter. For Rabe, this wasn't necessarily a deep ideological commitment to anti-Semitism or Lebensraum. For many Germans abroad, the party was a social and professional network, a way to show loyalty to the homeland. He believed in the order and national revival Hitler promised. When the Japanese siege began, Rabe, like other foreign nationals, had the chance to evacuate on waiting gunboats. Most did, but Rabe looked at the hundreds of thousands of Chinese employees, neighbors, and friends who had no escape, and he could not leave. "I cannot bring myself for now to betray the trust these people have put in me," he wrote in his now famous diary. Alongside a handful of other courageous foreigners, including American missionaries like Minnie Vautrin Rabe, helped establish the Nanking Safety Zone. This was a 3.86 square kilometer area in the western part of the city, demarcated as a neutral civilian refuge. They modeled it after the safe zones created in WWII. Rabe, leveraging his status as the head of the local Nazi Party chapter, was elected its leader. The Japanese military, nominally allied to Germany, was at least obliged to acknowledge him. It was a thread of leverage, and Rabe would pull on it with every ounce of his being. The safety zone was a fragile concept, a line drawn on a map in a city where all law had collapsed. As the Japanese troops poured in, the zone became a magnet for the terrified. Soon, over 250,000 people were crammed into its confines, spilling into every building, courtyard, and open space. Rabe's own property at 1 Xiaofen Piao became a microcosm of the crisis. He sheltered over 600 refugees in his garden and home. His diary entries from these days are a raw, relentless chronicle of horror and frantic action. December 17, 1937. 2 Japanese soldiers have climbed over the garden wall and are about to break into my house. When I appear, they give the excuse that they saw 2 Chinese soldiers climb over the wall. When I indicate that they are lying, they disappear. He documented mass executions, the rounding up of men, the constant raids on the safety zone to seize women. Every day was a battle of nerves and wills. Rabe and his committee would drive around the zone in cars, flying Nazi and American flags, intervening in atrocities in progress. They wrote protest letters to the Japanese embassy, lists of crimes, appeals to humanity, often to indifferent or hostile officials. Rabe's strategy was a blend of blunt confrontation and shrewd diplomacy. He would directly confront Japanese officers, pointing to his swastika armband and demanding to know if this was how an ally of the German Reich behaved. He used the looming presence of Nazi Germany as a shield, knowing the Japanese High Command did not want an international incident with Berlin. He wasn't always successful. The violence was too vast, too ingrained. But his interventions saved countless individual lives. Stories spread among the Chinese of the foreign devil, with the strange armband who stood between them and death. They began to call him the Living Buddha of Nanjing. The psychological toll on Rabe was immense. Here was a man who still, in his heart, believed in the positive aspects of the Germany Hitler was building. He wrote in his diary with pride about the efficiency of the new autobahns. Yet every day he was using the symbol of that Germany to combat a massacre that mirrored the very brutality his own party was beginning to systematize in Europe. He seemed to exist in a state of cognitive dissonance, compartmentalizing the Nazi ideology from the Nazi reality unfolding before him. In one poignant entry, after a particularly harrowing day of witnessing babies bayoneted, he writes of listening to his records of Beethoven and Schubert, trying to reconnect with the good Germany of culture and order he cherished. He sent detailed reports to Hitler himself, appealing to the Führer to use his influence with Japan to stop the atrocities. He genuinely believed that if Hitler only knew, he would act. Those reports vanished into the bureaucracy of the Third Reich, never acknowledged. When Rabe was finally ordered back to Germany in the spring of 1938, he left as a hero to the people of Nanjing, who presented him with a signed tribute and begged him to tell the world what he had seen. He returned to Berlin a changed man. He gave lectures, showed films and photographs of the Nanjing atrocities, a direct challenge to the Nazi-Japanese alliance. The Gestapo quickly intervened. He was arrested, interrogated, and sternly warned to never speak of Nanjing again. His employer, Siemens, posted him to a safe job in Afghanistan, effectively exiling him. The man who had saved 250,000 people was silenced by the very regime whose symbol he had used as a tool for good. The end of the war brought Rabe no peace. Living in a ruined Berlin, destitute and suffering from ill health, he was now deemed a Nazi by the Allied occupiers. Despite testimonials from the Chinese community about his heroism, he and his family faced starvation. In a final, cruel twist of fate, it was the very people he had saved who rescued him. When news of his plight reached Nanjing in 1948, the city mobilized. Despite being in the throes of a civil war, the Nanjing government raised a substantial sum of money and shipped tons of food parcels to Berlin, literally keeping the Rabe family alive. The mayor of Nanjing wrote, "In the name of those who survived the massacres, we thank you." John Rabe died of a stroke in 1950, largely forgotten by the world, his diary unpublished. His story only resurfaced decades later, when his papers were discovered and published in the 1990s, forcing a reevaluation of this complex figure. Today, in Nanjing, John Rabe is honored as a righteous man. His former residence is a memorial museum. In Germany, his story is taught as a lesson in individual conscience. John Rabe was not a saint. He was a man of his time, with all its prejudices and blind spots. But in a specific critical moment, his fundamental decency overrode ideology. He saw human beings in peril and acted. His story is a powerful reminder that heroism is not the exclusive domain of the purely virtuous. Sometimes it is an individual act of courage that shines all the brighter for emerging from the shadows of a dark era. He proved that even a symbol of hate could, in the right hands, be turned into a shelter from the storm.